Good morning. Hope everybody had a Merry Christmas and welcome to our virtual service for December 28th, 2025. Hope you are resting up, and as I mentioned a few times, you could even go to church today in your pajamas on your own couch or wherever it is that you are, and you can be watching and worshiping with us right now on the internet. So let's stand together wherever you're at and let's sing a song together to worship the Lord.
Trembles at
We're going to be looking at Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 through 12 this morning. In a small southern town, there was a nativity scene that showed great skill and talent that had gone into creating it. One small feature bothered one man who drove by it. The three wise men were wearing firemen's helmets. Totally unable to come up with a reason or explanation, he left. At a quick stop on the edge of town, he asked the lady behind the counter about the fire helmets. She exploded into a rage and yelled at him. She said, "All you out-of-towner people, you don't ever read the Bible." He said, "I do read the Bible, but I don't recall anything about firemen coming in the Bible to see Jesus." She jerked her Bible from behind the counter, ruffled through some pages, and finally jabbed her finger at a passage. And sticking it in his face, she said, "See, it says right here, the three wise men came from afar." That's one of my kids' favorite Christmas jokes. I thought I'd share that with you because we're going to have one last little taste of a Christmas message before we turn the calendars to 2026. I've seen it on many church signs and billboards over the years. Wise men still seek Him. But there are very few that seek after God. The only ones who do seek after God are the ones whom God has sought out. As it says in Romans chapter 3, "As it is written, there is none righteous, no, not one. There is none that understands. There is no one who seeks after God." It is only after God calls out a man or a woman that they seek out His truth. As John tells us, we love God because He first loved us. This morning we're going to see wise men who came from afar, seeking out the blessed Messiah so that they might worship Him. We're going to see foolish men who hear of His coming but do nothing. And we're going to see a foolish king who tries to use deception in order to find and kill the young Jesus. In verses 1 and 2, we see the search by the wise man. In verses 3 through 8, we see the horrible scheme by the foolish king. And in verses 9 through 12, we see the sought-after one, Jesus Christ, who is worthy of our adoration just as He was adored by the wise men. The Scripture says this, Matthew chapter 2, starting in verse 1. "Now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, 'Where is He who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw His star when it rose and have come to worship Him.' When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And assembling all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. They told him, 'In Bethlehem of Judea. For so it is written by the prophet, And you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel.' Then Herod summoned the wise men secretly and ascertained from them what time the star had appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, 'Go and search diligently for the child. And when you have found Him, bring me word, that I too may come and worship Him.' After listening to the king, they went on their way. And behold, the star that they had seen when it rose went before them until it came to rest over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. And going into the house, they saw the child with Mary His mother, and they fell down and worshipped Him. Then opening their treasures, they offered Him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. And being warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed to their own country by another way." 2,000 years ago, there were a group of magi, a group of wise men. The Bible doesn't say that there was only 3 of them, but that's become popular in recent history because they brought 3 gifts. In fact, some of the apocryphal writings of the past gave names to the wise men. To be sure, the Bible tells us very little about this group of wise men, including where they were from, except to tell us that they were from the east. I believe it is most likely that the wise men came from the area which was once known as Babylon. The book of Daniel in the Old Testament talks much about wise men who gave advice to the kings of the day. After Daniel showed his great wisdom, which was bestowed upon him by God, Daniel was made the top of the wise men in the city. The wise men there respected Daniel, and no doubt Daniel explained to them many of the prophecies and the great news of a coming Messiah. And as we've talked about before in some sermon series around Christmas in the past, that Daniel gave a prophecy that pinpointed the coming of the Messiah. So if these men were from Babylon, they would have known from Daniel's prophecy about the time that they should start looking for this star. And although most of the Jews returned to Judah and Jerusalem after the exile, there were many who stayed behind in Babylon and no doubt would talk about the great Messiah who was to come. So obviously the wise men here in Matthew chapter 2 had some knowledge of Jewish scriptures, Jewish word of mouth about the expectation of a messianic ruler who would arise out of Judah and rule over mankind. The text says that they traveled from the east to Jerusalem. Most likely was not just a few men. These men were rich. You could tell how well off they are by the gifts that they brought Jesus. And they took with them great security, a lot of detail, probably almost like a small army. So it was no small feat for all these people to travel such great distance because of a star they saw in the sky. When they got to Jerusalem, they began to ask around to the people, asking where the Messiah was to be born. They had traveled all this way looking for the one who was born King of the Jews. They came for a specific reason, not to gawk at the Messiah, not to say they were one of the ones to see him with their eyes. They came to adore him. They came to worship him. They came to give him what is due as the Messiah. Then that leads us to a question of application. Are you like the wise men who seek out Jesus to worship him? Why are you watching this today, seeking out Jesus? I hope that you are doing it so that you can worship him in spirit and in truth, because he is certainly worthy of our praise and worship. Next, we see the scheme in verses 3 through 8. King Herod was a man who had been king in Judah for many years by this time. He was known as a ruler that had brought some prosperity to the region. He was a great builder, even including his renovations of the temple, but he was a ruthless man. Herod the Great, as he was known, was one of the most feared men in biblical history. He often killed his enemies, or anyone that he thought might have been his enemy. He once had his own wife killed because he thought she was going to lead an uprising against him. He killed 2 of his sons because he thought they were going to take over the throne from him. Caesar Augustus, the emperor, once jokingly said that he would rather be Herod's pig than his son. It was so bad that Herod even had a bunch of popular people in Jerusalem arrested when he was on his deathbed. And then he ordered that they should be killed the moment he died, just to guarantee that there would be mourning and weeping in Jerusalem. But thankfully, when he died, that order was countermanded. The Bible says that when Herod heard about these wise men going all over the place, asking everybody, where's the one who was to be born King of the Jews, that he became troubled. He became troubled because he was worried about any threat to his kingdom. He was worried about what these wise men, with all their support staff, their little army that they brought, was going to do in his territory. Were they going to meet up with rebel groups and fight? Were they going to meet with this new king and take over Jerusalem? Herod wasn't sure what to think. He was also worried about a new king coming in and taking over his throne. He knew he wasn't popular among the Jews because he ruled over them, but he himself was a Gentile. He had some reason to be troubled, so he comes up with a plan. And isn't it interesting that the Bible tells us that all of Jerusalem was troubled with him? I believe they were more worried about what this maniacal king was going to do to try to hold on power than anything else. They wondered, what is he going to do if they're talking about a king of the Jews? So Herod calls in the chief priests and the scribes, and he asks where the Christ was to be born. These men were considered the most knowledgeable about the Old Testament. There was supposed to be only one high priest, but the religion had been perverted by money so bad that people were selling even that divine office. That's why it said there were chief priests, plural, and then scribes. The scribes also sometimes called lawyers, the so-called experts on the Old Testament. So obviously they knew what the prophecies had said. They quote a prophecy given by Micah the prophet as an answer to King Herod. And you, Bethlehem of Judah, are not the least among the princes of Judah, for out of you shall come a governor. And then they added, that shall rule my people Israel. Now we have these scribes and chief priests. They have been waiting and waiting for their Messiah. They have been anticipating Christ and His coming. They now know through rumor and confirmation that the wise men saw the star of the Messiah and have come to worship Him. But do we have any account of these chief priests and scribes rushing to Bethlehem to worship Jesus? No, they seem to do nothing. That's one of the responses you can have when you hear about Jesus. You can be like the scribes and the chief priests and you can do absolutely nothing. Or you can be like the wise men who sought to worship Him. Which one are you like? Are you like the scribes who let the signs go in one ear and out the other? Are you doing nothing? Are you seeking after Christ to worship Him? Herod knew then exactly what he wanted to do. He finds out from the wise men when they saw the star, and he tells them to go to Bethlehem. Then he asks that they tell him where the king is so that he can worship him. Now obviously this is a dirty lie. As we see later, Herod just wanted to make sure he eliminated the threat to his throne. If you go on into Matthew, you'll see that Herod just started killing all the young boys, all in the area, because he wanted to make sure that he had killed the Messiah. Now, are you like Herod? Are you pushing Jesus out of your life, refusing to let Him in because you don't want anyone to be king of your life in your place? We get such a grip on everything that we have. We are control freaks when it comes to our lives. How do I know this? I looked in the mirror. I looked in the mirror. I need to learn and learn fast how to let go of what I'm doing and instead let God be in control. And you need to too. Worshiping Him and making Him first in our lives is so much better than trying to control everything ourselves. Finally, I want you to see the salt one, Jesus Christ, in verses 9 through 12. In verses 9 and 10, we see the star appear again to the wise men as they were on their way to Bethlehem. The star was supernatural, leading them until it was exactly over where Jesus' house with Mary and Joseph was. Jesus was likely young here. Probably wasn't the night of His birth, but it was in the first months or maybe the first years of His life. And I think this is a great way to approach worship. They were getting excited when they saw the star again. It says that they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. It was an intense joy, a great joy. You might even translate it as that they rejoiced with a whole bunch of joy. It was a sense of euphoria that they had, knowing how close they were to coming to the one who had been prophesied of, the one who was coming to rule, the one who was coming to reign, the one who fulfilled the promise of God to David. As the psalmist wrote this, "My covenant will I not break, nor alter the thing that has gone out of my lips. Once have I sworn by my holiness that I will not lie unto David. His seed shall endure forever, and his throne as the sun before me." That they were coming to worship the Messiah, the Son of David, the Son of God. and they were so excited that the Scripture says they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. How do you come to worship Him? You get up on a Sunday morning and say, "Oh, got to go to church." You come with excitement. I get to go to church. I get to worship God. I get to read my Bible. I get to pray to Him. Do you see it as a sense of joy, or do you come with a sense of duty? With duty or with joy that you can learn God's wisdom for your life. How do you bow down to Him to worship Him, with reverence and joy, or with selfish ambition? When they got to Jesus, they gave the gifts that were worthy of a king. The gold they gave Him was a symbol of His royalty. Gold was and is one of the standards of wealth even to this day. And they gave Him gold because He's king. Then they gave Him frankincense, which was a beautiful smelling incense used in the grain offerings in the tabernacle in the temple of the Old Testament. The church father Origen described frankincense as the incense of deity. They gave Him frankincense to emphasize that He is God. And then they gave Him myrrh. What was myrrh used for? It was used in a mixture for the preparation of bodies for burial. It was a symbol of Jesus' humanity, and I believe a prophecy of His coming death. Jesus is King. Jesus is God. Yet He was human. And do you worship Him as such? Do you worship Him as the King? Are you worshiping Him as God? And they brought Him gifts, and we should as well. Gifts of our time and talent and treasure. Gifts of all that we are. In conclusion, I want to ask you a few questions about your worship and your response to the call to worship Jesus. Are you like those scribes and priests who did nothing when they saw the signs? Have you heard the gospel over and over but just refuse to act and believe? Those who hear but do not believe will spend an eternity in hell. But those who hear and believe will spend an eternity in heaven. Are you like Herod, who won't allow anyone else to rule his life? Are you scared to submit yourself to Jesus because you want to be in control? Would you rather see Jesus destroyed than to be king of your life? All those who reject Jesus as Lord will spend an eternity in hell. But all those who have Him as Lord will spend an eternity in heaven. What's your choice? Hopefully, you are like the wise men. You hear Jesus' call and you come. You come in true worship with the greatest gift that we can give to God, the gift that God demands that we give to Him, the gift of our lives, that we live for Him. Give your life over to Him today. God bless you all. We look forward to seeing you Wednesday night.